Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of My Faith with Homer and Pip. Homer!
Tommy, I've been following the draft for, I don't know, 40 years. Never remember an NFL draft like this. Every family, every player, the first thing they wanted to do, every one of them was talk about God, to thank God, to bring up God. And I thought, it's never been like this before. You used to have maybe, now it's every family, every mother, every father. And people should watch a replay of the NFL draft, even if they know nothing about football.
And as we know, it's amazing how God can give us strength and grace. The other day, I saw a lady making pizzas and asked her how she was doing, and one thing led to another. Happened to know she's a woman of faith, and she told me that she has two kids who are mentally ill, and she's exhausted. So I said, "Well, maybe we should pray." And Mitch, I was telling this to Homer yesterday. She grabbed my hands and said a prayer that just blew me away. I had nothing. I had nothing left, and that's part of the goodness of God and His strength. So. This is My Faith with Homer and Pip. I'm Tommy Pippins. We're produced by Brent Young. Can't do it without him. Homer and the Holy Spirit put this together. We hope and pray it helps you too and through your journey to the cross of Christ. And I say that because we Christians follow a Jewish carpenter. So we have a wonderful man here who lives his Jewish faith. We're all connected. As Brett Favre said when the late Corey Stringer passed away, we may wear different uniforms, but we're all on the same team. It is such a delight, Mitch Nelles. We are honored. And with that, we'll kick it off to Homer.
Yes, I kind of know Mitch's story, but I don't know the story. And I'm fascinated, as with all of it, my faith with Mitch Nellis. Mitch, how do
Oh
you want
man.
to start?
I thought we were going to talk about my faith in the Packers actually winning a playoff game this year.
We can go
Which,
there if you
which
want.
my faith wavers for the
Yes.
Packers winning in the playoffs. So, man, where do we want to start? Well, like I tell people whenever I'm out and about and religion comes up, I just kind of say I'm an Old Testament kind of guy. Some people get that what that means, some people don't, and that could probably mean a few different things to different people. But I was raised in the conservative Jewish faith, and for those of you who don't know, uh, in the traditional Jewish faith, there's Orthodox, conservative, and Reform. It doesn't refer to politics. This isn't in the politics with Pip and Homer. It's in the faith. Um, and so I went to a Jewish day school from kindergarten through eighth grade. I kept up with my studies through high school, through college, and now both my kids go to the Milwaukee Jewish Day School. My wife is a Jewish communal professional. She works for the Jewish Theological Seminary. With all due respect to me, she'd be way more interesting to have on your podcast. So you should definitely have her on at some point. She's their
Please.
director of outreach. So she runs their podcasts and a lot of their other outreach to audiences that aren't just at the seminary. And as you guys know, I'm in local radio. Homer and I were on together for 7 years, and I was at iHeart, now I'm at Odyssey, and it's like, you know, we just talk about sports, and when we can, we talk about our faith.
All right, your parents showed you, taught you, but one day it becomes yours. When was that, and what touched you? Maybe what you remember, what touched you from them, and then what
Wow,
touched you when you said, "This is now mine."
that's a great question. I've spent a lot of time thinking about my relationship with my parents. My parents were divorced when I was two.
Mm.
And my dad was never really close with his faith. My mom was much closer. My dad's parents passed away when I was very young, and so I was always very close with my maternal grandparents, and they were always very involved. My grandpa was the president of his synagogue. My grandmother was the president of the sisterhood, and they were very involved, but. And they always just kind of did it because it's just what you did. My grandpa couldn't from the old Bible, the Torah. My grandpa couldn't really read from the Torah. Like he was never taught when he was a kid. I grew up reading from the Torah. I read almost every Saturday morning at my synagogue. But I remember a couple stories. One, just the decision to send me to a Jewish day school, I think is a pretty big decision to send any of our kids to a parochial school and to get them that education, not just on Sunday mornings, not just at Sunday school, but day in and day out and making that dedication. And the other, the story of my dad, I have this great, my dad was one of the top volunteers in Boston in the Boy Scouts, very involved in the Boy Scouts, won national awards, like stuff I don't even know because I was never in the Boy Scouts. But I remember like he would go to these summer jamborees that were like these huge national Boy Scout, events. And the Jewish troops and the Jewish leadership knew he was Jewish, even if he didn't practice any Judaism. And they'd bring him into the tent and he'd have a part in the service. And he would always tell me about it because he knew I was closer to my faith than he was at that time in his life. And it always struck me as like, yeah, but Dad, you went in and you picked up like from the time you were 13 when you had to go to Sunday school. And so you learned all that, like you picked up right as if you never, it never left your heart. It never left your being. And I always loved that. And then for me, it was just kind of a natural progression. I think during college, I made the conscious decision just to keep doing it, because it was so, I believe in. I mean, there's so many things I believe in, and as part of my faith, I believe in the community aspects of it. I believe in the being able to take a walk by yourself and center yourself and talk to God or whatever higher being you're communing with to kind of settle your soul and relax at times. And I just think like while I was in college, I didn't go to synagogue as often. I didn't do as many things because I was hanging out with my buddies. And if I went out Friday night till 2 in the morning, I wasn't waking up at 8 in the morning to go to synagogue. But I always kept that peace. And whenever I came back home, I made sure to stay involved in the community. And I really felt like that was something so important to me.
If you give 60 seconds and people want to know, Mitch, what is your faith? What is the Jewish faith? You only have 60 seconds. What do you think is the most important for them to know about the faith, or maybe even better, your faith?
First of all, I pull out my phone and I have like 7 different rabbis' phone numbers in my phone. I have my rabbi, I have my friends who are rabbis, I have friends who I went to high school with who are rabbis. Call my rabbi. Um, Judaism, it's the belief in the Old Testament. It's that there's one God and God is above all of us. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And that we say when we wake up, when we go to bed, for every event, for every prayer service, the Shema is always in that service. And so it's that. And then it's the concept of like treating your neighbors as you would like to be treated, leading with kindness, being a good person. To me, that's what it's about. It's about the type of person. And Homer, I think that's why you and I always got along so well, is because we both believe in our faith so strongly, but we also believe in like humanity so strongly and being kind to each other and like doing nice things for each other. And Homer, I know you hate it, right? We all know Homer's famous for hating talking about himself and all the good things he does in the community. But it's like I think that's part of what drew us to each other, is that we know how important it is to set that example for our kids, to set that example for our friends, for our family, for whoever it might be.
When you're going to day school or whatever, is it things they teach you that are references to the Bible or to the Jewish faith, or how do they approach it to kids where you bought into it?
Again, I think about this concept of tikkun olam, repairing the world. And that's in the Old Testament. It's one of the main tenets of the Old Testament, tikkun olam, repairing the world. And I think that's where we lead with our kids, is that, they're leading they're learning every week. The way we read the Torah is we read a different portion each week. And so by the time you get through a whole year, you've read the entire Old Testament. You've read the entire Torah. And so they do, as they get older, as they get into 6th and 7th and 8th grade, they do Torah study. They learn about, what's going on with Moses, or why does this law, why are we, not mixing milk and meat in the Old Testament like we do, or why can this linen not be mixed with this linen? And then the stories of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob and Joshua and all those stories come together about the leaving of Egypt and the story of Passover, which we just had recently. And I think, so it's storytelling, but then it's also the concepts of empathy and the concepts of repairing the world. And again, teaching our kids to do right, teaching our kids the difference between right and wrong, and how to treat the person who may have less than us, how to treat the stranger or the immigrant, which is all in the Bible about how to treat people the right way. Um, and I think that's where we lead with our kids, is like teaching them how to be good people, teaching them the importance of having faith and sharing that faith, and also having that ability to communicate it and to find meaning for yourself.
What are your favorite stories?
Man, there's, like, so I talked about how like you should have my wife on. You should have my the person you should really have on is
No,
my
I
father-in-law.
don't. I
Except,
don't want any of them on because their stories aren't better than yours because your stories are your faith. And it's
yeah,
every bit as important as the other people you mentioned.
I know. So I don't know if this is, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit. I mean, I love the story of when Joshua's brothers come to, I'm sorry, Joseph's brothers come to Egypt, and they're not there with Benjamin. And he says, "Nope, go back. I know you have a younger brother. Bring him." And they don't recognize him. They don't know they're meeting with Joseph. And Joseph says, and Joseph puts them through the ringer because they were going to kill him. They were going to kill him. And then they're like, "No, let's not kill him. Let's throw him in the pit. And then we'll put blood on his coat and we'll show our dad that he was killed." And I just think and then the story of how Joseph got to be where he was in jail in Egypt. And then he started reading people's dreams, and it got to the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh trusted this guy. And it's like all these intricacies of like how this happened and how it developed. I just think is so interesting to the human spirit.
We will get Tommy, it's yours, but everybody just witnessed the first appearance of thunder in Mitch
Yes.
Nelles's
Yes.
My Faith. That's the thunder I know. Tommy?
Well, I don't have the pleasure of knowing Mitch as well as you do, Homer, over the many years, but it always seemed to me, Mitch, that you were positive. I mean, I love the way you do the show. Thunder, as Homer said, you'd given everything, but you're always so positive and always so kind. And now, as I look back, I can see, at least in my humble opinion, it has and had a lot to do with your faith. Would you agree
Yeah.
with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's such a key tenet. And I think honestly, that should be a key tenet of all of our faiths. Like I think that's what connects me with you guys. Like that connects me with people in the community. I mean, we know what percentage of people in the community are Jewish, but we also know what percentage of people in the community should be kind and should lead with kindness and should lead with connection and should lead with like even finding the most basic connection with someone. Oh, my parent went to this school, your parent went to this school, or something like that. Or I like mango, you like mango. I mean, who cares what it is? But it's like God put us in that place at that moment to have that moment with someone, and to not lead with kindness and to not lead with positivity doesn't make any sense to me. We're all on this ride, on this rock, around this sun once. And wherever our soul goes next, and however we're taken care of, and whatever happens in the afterlife, like I'm here right now with you two fine gentlemen doing the greatest podcast in the history of podcasts. And there's nowhere I'd rather be.
What a joy. I don't know if I could follow that up, Homer, but one thing I love, Mitch, the community. I'm
Mhm.
blessed to have some wonderful Jewish friends. The
Mhm.
community
Yep.
of wonderful Jews practicing their faith. It's amazing. If more of us had that, including
Mhm.
Christians,
Mhm.
this world would be a better place. Would you talk about being a Jew and being in community?
Absolutely. So I'm going to take two different paths on this question. The first path I'm going to take is not really about faith or about religion, but it's more about, this shared, in the Jewish community, if you have this shared experience of growing up Jewish, you create community. And in some of my communities in the Jewish community, it's people who don't really embrace their faith, but they embrace the customs, or they embrace the traditions, or they embrace what their parents or their grandparents believed in, or they embrace the memory of the Holocaust, frankly, which is a big deal, certainly in today's lexicon. And so it's that community of that shared history, and then wherever that goes, great. That's a shared community. But then there's the other path, certainly, of the people who are there on, with me. I have a community of people who are there Saturday mornings, or very often we have different families over to our house for Friday night Sabbath dinner, or we're at somebody else's house, or we're at the school, or we're at the synagogue, or wherever or when we're with family. There's always a big family dinner. My mother-in-law, man, you guys should have her beef ribs on a Friday night. I mean, forget about it.
Hmm.
You won't get one because I'll grab them all. But that concept of having that shared faith on a Saturday morning and praying together and singing together and being in a room, and there's no judgment. I go into a supermarket right now and I start singing along to the music, and my daughters are embarrassed to everywhere, and everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy. I go into synagogue on Saturday morning and I sing at the top of my lungs to some of the prayers that I've been praying since literally kindergarten that I can remember. And there's everybody's singing along too. Or if they're not singing along, it's because they don't want to sing, but they enjoy other people singing. And I just think like that's something that's really meaningful to me to have. And when you share that faith with people, there is that, judgment-free zone in a way, or should be at least.
That's beautiful. And therein, I think, lies the thought that I want to share with you and get your opinion, Mitch Nellis, is that it just seems that family is so important. Today, families are separated up, but in the Jewish faith, in the Jewish community, family is important and encouraging kids and loving kids.
Mhm.
And I suspect that happens in your home.
Absolutely. It's tough sometimes because my in-laws split their time between North Carolina and Tennessee. And my sister-in-law and brother-in-law and nephews are in Jacksonville. And my brother-in-law and sister-in-law who are expecting in August live in Palo Alto. And so and my mom is 5 minutes away. So my mom's good because we're in Whitefish Bay and she's in Glendale. But when we get together, like I said, these Friday night dinners are a big deal. And we get dressed up and we sing all the prayers before the meal. But it's just that concept of being together on a Friday night. Like we'll have weeks or times where everybody's got to leave by Thursday. And we'll all make it work so we can stay for Friday night and maybe leave on Saturday, just so we can get that Friday night dinner in together. But in the family unit specifically with my wife and my two daughters, absolutely. I mean, every Friday night, even if it's just the four of us, we do something to mark the Sabbath. And we just, I mean, as Homer knows, like, I mean, I'm at my daughter's. I coach softball. I used to coach basketball. I'm at every game. My daughter's starting at first base tonight
Yes.
for varsity. So very excited about that. And just being there for each other and knowing that we have each other's backs. And again, you guys know that doesn't mean we always agree on everything. That doesn't mean we always get along, but we love each other. And we're there. And at the end of the day, we know how important we are to each other.
I'm thinking too that as I listen to you, Mitch, and you know this, there's suffering in this life. We can't avoid it, right? We talk about
Absolutely.
loss, family loss, and there's happiness, but all that passes, and yet we can have joy in the midst of all of it. Are you a proponent of that? Is that what keeps you going as you take these wonderful walks and you commune with your higher power?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's something, and that's not an easy realization, right? That we can go through hard times and come out okay, or we can be more fortunate than others and still have empathy for others and try to help or try to lend a helping hand or in Hebrew, charity is called tzedakah. To give tzedakah is a mitzvah, is a good deed. But I think it's important to remember that certainly things are hard. Like things are hard in our world. We see war, we see abuse, we see famine, we see, and sometimes it affects us in our worlds, and sometimes it's half a world away, but it still affects us. And so it's a balance, right? It's that balance of managing our faith that things are, that what is happening, how do we use our strength of self, our strength of character, our strength in belief, our strength in faith, to kind of figure out how to make things okay for us, knowing that it's okay when things aren't like, it's okay to not be okay sometimes, right? We're not always going to be okay, and that's okay too.
Hmm. And in those times when you're not okay, or maybe you've gone through a great deal, has your faith ever wavered? Mitch, or do you just say, I'm going to keep going because I know he's always with me no matter what?
That's a funny, that's an interesting, that's a great question. And the way I'm going to answer it is it's never wavered, but it is, but it makes me ask more questions, right? Like when something's not going right, or something hasn't gone the way I thought it was going to go, or something is clearly unfair in the world, or when, an umpire makes a bad call at first base. No, that's obviously a much smaller example. Um, but but it makes me question like why and where do we go from here? What can we learn from this? And B, what do we need to do as humans, as people? What do I need to do as a person, as an individual, to communicate better, to process things better, to find a common ground with someone where it seems like there's no commonalities. So faith has never wavered, but certainly I ask more questions. And I think that's part of like what I love about my faith is that I think I have a high power. I think I have God who wants those questions, who
Mhm.
wants to be in that conversation. We're in a society right now where nobody wants to ask questions, right? Everybody just wants to go to their mountaintop and talk about how right they are. I'm right, everybody else is wrong, blah, blah. Well, we used to live in a society where you could ask questions and not get shut down for it and not get shot for it. And I think it's really important to remember that, like, that's the way we were meant to be here. We were meant to ask these questions. We were meant to look for answers. We were meant to find common ground, and we were meant to agree to disagree. Listen, there's some things with God that I agree to disagree on, and that's okay. I'm going to say this. I eat a cheeseburger, okay?
Right.
In the Old Testament, I'm not supposed to eat a cheeseburger. God and I have chosen to disagree on cheeseburgers. They're just too delicious, God.
You and Homer are so similar that way. He gives God a grade and everything. You're better than that, God. If something happened we can't understand it.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful. Homer, there's a lot of spiritual wisdom that I'm getting from Mitch Nellis, and I know other people will when this is posted on My Faith with Homer and Pip. So back to you, buddy.
How, Mitch, is your faith the same, or how has it changed in any way in your life?
Ooh. I think, like anything, man, you guys have the best questions. I love this. I think, like anything, it changes as you change. When you're a teenager or you're a young adult and your priorities are different, and then you get married, your priorities are different. Then you have kids and your priorities are different. So I would say that, when I look at my faith, there have been times where I've been less observant. I don't know that that means my faith has wavered, but again, I didn't go to synagogue as much, or I didn't participate in holidays as much. Um, and I think as I've gotten older and I've had kids and I've seen the importance of community and people coming together, especially since 6 years ago, we went to a time where we're told not to be together. Um, I think that my faith has increased in terms of what I not what I ask for from God, but my conversation with God has increased. Like the back and forth. Like again, like those things that I ask, but also like my opinions and reading and doing more study and reading more, some of those stories. There are thousands and thousands of pages of the rabbis throughout the centuries and the millennia of like, breaking down every word and every phrase and digging into some of that. So I think having that opportunity to have that open dialogue with God, where I do feel like when you're a kid, you're kind of said, this is what God says, and this is the way it is. And I don't know that that's great. Like I think there are certain non-negotiables. Like Homer used to say this on the radio, you can stop at a red light. Like that's a non-negotiable. You shouldn't go through a red light. I always remember that. And I do think that there's some, certainly in faith, the way we act, the way we treat each other, the way we respond to God. But I think that open dialogue is really important, and I think that has evolved as I've gotten older and seen more, both globally and locally and in my own home. that opportunity to have that conversation and to set my daughters up to have a healthy relationship with their faith, I think is really important for me. Because again, they've gone through different, they're 15 and 13. They've both had their bat mitzvahs. And so they've both gone through that conversation with God, that experience of leading services and reading from the Old Testament in the Old Hebrew. By the way, modern day Hebrew and what's in the Torah are almost like totally different languages.
Oh,
Like they're just like people don't know that. Like you go and you hear people speaking Hebrew, and it is very different from what we see written when Aramaic was the language of the commoner at the time. So to be able to read Hebrew was a big deal back then too. So I just think like that is kind of how things have evolved. Like keeping my eye on the community, keeping my eye on what's going on in society, and then also helping to guide my daughters.
Is there any time in which you would say that you felt the closest to God?
Wow. Wow. I mean, again, it's kind of low hanging fruit and it's kind of whatever, but like, those big moments.
Excuse me,
And
sir, it's your fruit.
I
That's
know it
what's
is my
important.
fruit. I mean, the birth of my daughters
okay.
certainly is, I mean, just the process of childbirth is so miraculous. And the fact that, we get it right as often as we do, with the acknowledgement that we don't get it right as often as we should. And that's something in society that we have to figure out. That the healthcare system, et cetera, et cetera. That's a whole different podcast. But I also, there have been times where like something small will happen in my life, like a small win or a small loss, not a big deal. Like, I think about the passing of my father, and he's been gone 16 years now.
Hmm.
And I didn't, when he passed, I didn't have a moment. And we had his funeral in he lived his whole life in Boston, and he passed away in New Bedford, which is right on the border of Rhode Island. And we had his funeral. And then a couple months later, we had a ceremony for him at the Boy Scout camp where he was like the scoutmaster. And it was like in nature, and everybody went around and said something nice about Howie. And it was like, and this was like, again, I didn't live with my dad since I was 2. Like I didn't grow up. I grew up every Wednesday night and every Sunday I was with my dad until I moved to Milwaukee when I was 14. We never lost contact. We always stayed, I visited once or twice a year. We talked on the phone a lot, but I didn't know my dad intimately, like a parent that you lived with, right? Like I didn't live with him as a human being. And to hear like what the other people had to say with him, and then to have the rest of the afternoon at this camp, and I don't know if the state of Massachusetts is listening, but we poured his ashes out at the camp. I don't know if that's legal or not, but that's what he wanted, and we did it. So statute of limitations is fine, I'm sure. So stuff like that. But then again, I'll go back to there have been like again, small wins or small losses in my life. Nothing major where I'll be at synagogue on a Saturday morning and like something will hit me. And a lot of times it's so the way the Torah service works is they open this ark in front of the congregation. And I think we have about 8 Torahs there. And every Saturday we read from the same one. And some of them are just there ornamentally. Some of them are set up for specific times of the year. So you don't have to roll the scrolls. But when you open the ark, that's when people say like, that's when you say your special prayer to God. That's when you're closest to God. And as a leader in my congregation, oftentimes I'm up on the bima, the stage, and I'm with the Torahs and I'm in the ark, taking a Torah out to hand to someone to carry around the congregation. And it's like every so often you're just like, whoa, I'm here. And there's just like a strengthening of faith and a strengthening of being and just an awareness of like I'm where I'm supposed to be right now.
All right, this will be my last question, which generally, but it will be this time. So when I tell someone I'm Catholic, what I want them to think is, okay, just not more Mother Teresa stories. I know all about her, and it doesn't mean that occurs.
Right.
But that's what I would like, and I ask you the same. You're Jewish.
Yep.
When someone finds out you're Jewish, what do you want them to think as what it represents? And that doesn't mean they will. It doesn't mean it is. because I doubt I'm going to find a priest who says, "Yeah, to be talking about Mother Teresa, there's probably something else you should ask or
Right.
wish that when they find out you're Catholic." But um, I'm just
S-
curious.
So it's a great question, and without getting too globally political, my answer is different than it would have been before October 7th, 2023.
Okay,
Before,
before October,
yeah,
what was it?
before October 7th, 2023, my answer probably would have been like, oh, so you don't eat milk, so it's just like, are you rich, or do you mix milk and meat, or do you not like, so you don't believe in Jesus? Like, how can you not believe in Jesus? Everybody believes in Jesus. Just like, kind of funny stuff, but kind of serious stuff about like, being Jewish just means I believe in the Old Testament and not the New Testament. And I believe Jesus existed and he was a rabbi. And then he had a different calling and helped. I don't know if you would say he created or helped create something amazing. That's a global phenomenon, no doubt about it. He didn't do any of that. God did that, obviously, through Jesus. But you know what I'm saying. Um, what I would say to people now is, I don't hate Palestinians. I
Mm,
don't hate Iran. I don't hate Arabs. I don't hate Muslims. I actually wish everyone today could put all our guns down
mm,
and find a path toward peace
mm,
and figure out like why everything's so broken right now in the world in terms of Middle East politics, with the U.S. involved, with with everything going on, like the storming of Israel on October 7th, and then Israel's response to it. Like none of it's okay in terms of human life, right? You might be arguing that there's oppression. You can argue genocide. I would argue very strongly against that, but you can argue all these big words. But why can't we figure, like, we live once on Earth. Why can't we figure this out? Why can't we like have smart people come to a table and talk about, do you love your children more than you hate people on the other side? Because if you want your kids to live on Earth, let's figure out a path toward peace. And so, as a Jewish person, it doesn't mean I 100% support everything Israel does. It does mean I'm going to be a little more likely to support Israel on certain things. But it doesn't mean I don't support killing civilians. Like, who on earth supports killing civilians? No, like no sane, lots of people do, unfortunately. They're not sane. Sane people don't support that. And so I just would say that like that just because I'm Jewish doesn't mean I have hate in my heart for others. It's the opposite. I have love in my heart for everyone. Love thy neighbor as treat thy neighbor as himself, but love the stranger. And let's, like, people, come on, let's figure this out. It's enough already.
I don't think I'm allowing Tommy you to add anything to that.
Well, last time you said you forgot the question you usually ask, so this is marvelous. Sure, we could end here, but just in case, Mitch,
No, you ask it.
is there something that hasn't been covered yet that you want to leave people with as it relates to your faith?
Not really. I mean, I kind of hit it there.
Hmm.
Treat lead it, when pandemic was around, and I was out of a job, I was doing a daily Facebook video every morning from like 8 to 8:15. Just like, hey, let's wake up and yeah, we can't be together physically, but let's get together. And I would end every single video with this line. And my daughter, my 7-year-old at the time, who's now 13, she said it to me. First, she said, like, hope to hug you soon. And I said, yes, I agree. I hope to hug you soon. But during COVID, like, if there's something really contagious going on, let's not say hope to hug you soon. What else can you come up with? And she said, COVID's contagious. How about let's make kindness contagious?
Hmm.
And so that's how I ended every video. Let's make kindness contagious. And I that's what I believe that drives my Jewish faith. And again, whether you're Jewish or Catholic or any denomination of Judaism or Christianity or Muslim or whatever, like, be strong in your faith, be strong in your community, treat people the right way, and let's trust in God that good things will follow.
That's it. That's it right there. Mitch Nelles has been our guest on My Faith with Homer and Pip. Homer and the Holy Spirit came up with this idea. I'm Tommy Pippins, can't do it without our producer on remote, Brent Young, and we are so very, very thankful, Mitch Nelles. I like to say that anyone who shares his or her faith, as Homer said, it's there for all time, first of all, to show to your
You've got a
family and friends.
spiritual resume
That's it.
forever. And if
That
you
is,
don't want to talk, sometime you can go, hey, just go to My Faith with Homer
yeah,
and Pip. It's
yeah.
all there.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'm already looking forward to part two. I'm feeling joy because of what you shared and the kindness in your heart related to your faith and who you are. And we have the best and then the bestest. And I'm putting you in the bestest category, if I may, and cannot wait for part two. It has been an absolute blessing to have you with us, Mitch Nellis. Thank you so much. And God, please continue to bless the Nellis family.
Absolutely. Well, not just the Nellis family, but all of us.
Amen.
Let's make kindness contagious. And I will say it to the two of you. Hope to hug you soon.
I love it. We love it. Thank you so much, Mitch. Bye bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.